I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He's the author of several books, no other than Mr. Joel Flanagan-Grannemann. Yes, Mr. Joel, can you please again introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Joel Flanagan-Grannemann, and I'm the author of several books in the Servants of the Moon and Sun series. The first two are Talia, Heir to the Fairy Realm, and the second one is Talia on the Shore of the Sea. I'm currently working on the third book. It's in the audio recording by my wife and editor, and we're hoping to get that third one out um, in the fall in all formats: ebook, paperback, hardback, and audiobook, all coming out at once. So there's going to be, for the previous books, we had a little bit of lag between the audiobooks and the rest of the stuff. So we wanted to get it all out together and do a kind of a social media blitz. That's our plan.
Yes, so before we go on to the second book, let's do the recap of your debut novel.
Idea that the inspiring idea was, what if Maleficent was Aurora's was Aurora's mother? And that's the whole idea of it. So it begins with Talia, who is the heir to the fairy realm. Her mother's the queen of the fairies, and she starts a relationship with Bastille, who is the heir to the human realm. And the fairies and the humans have been at war for countless years, pretty much since this realm came into existence. And it's either been in a hot war or a cold war throughout all these centuries. And this idea that, Bastille is coming to the fairy realm to try to make peace, because there had been a huge battle that the fairies had sort of won, but there had been a lot of losses on both sides. And he really was stressing, really wanted peace between the two people. And Talia also wants that. Her mother also wants that. Talia's aunts, the three sisters, don't want that. They're very anti-humans, very, very, very racist. And Talia and Bastille start a relationship. They, they sleep together, and but then through machinations of the sisters and other humans, and a lot of drama and treachery goes on. Best Talia and Bastille are both betrayed, and Talia is sent off into exile for her bad judgment that would have possibly pushed both the humans and the fairies into war again, which neither of them was ready for. The humans were sort of ready for it, but the fairies aren't. They really want, her mother really wants peace between them, because it's been such a destructive war and so much death and destruction. So the first book continues Talia's journey through her exile and her decision to whether she's going to keep this child or not, because this child is going to be a half fairy, but it's also going to be the heir to both realms. It's her daughter, so it's the rare heir to the fairy realm. It's Bastille's daughter, because it's, it would essentially be his heir, but there's very little. The humans are very patriarchal, so they would never really accept a human queen, even a queen, nevertheless a half fairy queen. So there's lots of things going on, both behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. So that's what the first book is really about. Is about Talia's decision whether she's going to keep that child or not. And then moving into the second book, it's if that was what the first book was about. The second book is about Talia having made that decision to keep the child and to bear the child, and her the ladies that accompany her and the soldiers, they're her bodyguards that accompany them, finding a place of safety, because she's being pursued by both agents of her aunts, who are working on basically overthrowing the queen, because they don't like her policies toward the humans and to the other fairies. And there's also treachery on the sides of the humans. There's this not the half fairy. There's a fairy, a wingless fairy, unsurprisingly called Wingless, who is playing both sides. He's working with the sisters, he's working with the humans, he's working with his own, has his own agenda, and that's what that's what happens. That's basically
Yes.
the second book, and the second book goes through the birth of the child and what happens after, which is pretty intense, and then going into the repercussions of what happens. And I won't spoil any of that because it's pretty important.
Yes. Spoiler alert, people. Mr. Joel, why did you put the title Servants of the Moon and Sun trilogy? Is it trilogy or a series?
Oh, it's going to be a series. I've got planned the third book. It's going to be fairy centric, and then I've got two more books planned about the Exile Forest, which is a place of safety for pretty much all humans and half fairies, and just a place of safety for them. And then I've also got books planned about Rose, who's the human queen, and more Talia. So it's more than just a trilogy. It'll be several books. I really don't know how many because I kind of I kind of figure it out as I go along. I've got a basic framework, but going from there. But back to your original question. The servants of the moon and sun is what the fairies call themselves. That the fairies will say, "We are servants of the moon and sun." That is their how they feel about themselves, how they represent themselves. The moon and the sun are very strong symbols in their religion, their worship of the goddess. The sun, it, it it's a physical manifestation of their belief in the cycle of all things. The sun rises and sets. That the light comes and the light goes, but it always comes back. There's a cycle to their life and their belief. And the same thing with the moon, that the moon, gradually, goes from new moon to quarter to half to full, and then goes back again. And it's this longer cycle of the moon that also impacts them very, very profoundly. There's a section in the first book where Talia explains this basic creation myth, the idea of when the first fairies appeared on the shores of the sea into the fairy realm, that they saw the sun and they worshipped it, but it went away. Then the moon came out and the stars came out, and it just became this whole idea of balance and cycle of all things, that fairies believe very strongly in the idea that they are reincarnated, that when they die, their body is burned, their spirit is released, their spirit goes back to the goddess, and she decides to keep them there for a while or to send them back to start a new life. Whenever a fairy dies, they will always say, may he return, may she return swiftly, meaning that their spirit will come back in another body.
What are your preparation in writing this series?
As I said, definitely a pantser. I kind of know the whole overarching idea of the series, but I also kind of know the basic idea in the book, where it begins, where it ends, and then in the middle. Preparation for it, I did when I first got the idea. I sat down and wrote out a kind of a basic 2 or 3 page summary for what became really the first and second books. And as I finished the second book, I wrote out another outline of what's going forward, because there's so many plot threads, that there's what's happening in the fairy realm, what's happening in the exile forest, what's happening in the human realm, and they all blend together, and they all had their own separate stories, but they were all eventually coming to meet again at when the curse is fully revealed, which is after 16 years. So there's a lot happens between then and then, between the beginning and that end, and then a lot happens after the curse is triggered. So I know what a lot of what happens up until the curse, and because there's a lot of because in the second book, there's the beginnings of a fairy civil war between the queen's sisters and Talia and her people who are still faithful to her mother, and it evolves from a civil war to a little bit more of a cold war. That a lot of that there's these the two areas fighting, but there's a lot of fairies who are kind of staying out of it, that they want to kind of see which side's going to win, and then support that side. And so that was basically it, kind of getting that basic outline for it, and then just starting to write it and just working on it and figuring out the characters as they as they appear, as they are needed, and how new characters come in, how old characters work themselves in. So it's a really fluid situation. It's a very but it's also very exciting for me that I know the path, but I don't know all the branches to it as I go along. So it's really exciting, and it really makes me happy to do this.
Yes, sounds interesting, Mr. Joel. So, Talia, on the shore of the sea, the second book of the series. What behind the title?
On the shore of the sea is where Talia and her ladies and her soldiers go as a place of safety. And on the shore of the sea is where the first fairies were guided out of the sea by the goddess, by the mother of the waves, and founded the fairy realm. And they go there. Then there's on there in that place there's ruins of what the first fairies built, and then left and moved farther inland. So this is a kind of an abandoned area on the shore of the realm, and you know Talia and her people needed a place of safety, needed a place for her baby to be born, and then her baby to grow a little bit before they go back and throw themselves into everything that's happening back at the fairy court. So, and there's also a ancient prophecy saying that a queen will be born on the shore of the sea, and she will create and will be a catalyst for so much change and so much pain, but also so much joy. And there's a lot of interpretations of this prophecy, and a lot of them focus on this is a really bad thing that's going to happen, and so we don't want it to happen. So for centuries, no queen has gone to the shore to have their children. So the fact that Aurora is born there on the shore of the sea is very, very important. So that's what I was going for.
Wow, sounds interesting, Mr. Joel. So, Talia, on the shore of the sea, how did you crafted it?
It was written together with Heir to the Fairy Realm, and I wrote it in a whole whole long, 5 or 6 month period, and then we sat with my wife. We sat down and started editing it, and realizing that the word count was way too much for one book, and we figured out a good place to split it. We split it at a nice, an interesting cliffhanger that happens, and we just worked it from there. And it was just again, I knew the beginning, kind of the middle. I knew the curse had to happen somewhere in the middle of book two, and then the repercussions and what happens after the curse, and then ending with um, the beginning of a fairy civil war.
Interesting. So, before we go on, Mr. Joel, I want to shout out to the people listening. My top ranking for the last 30 days. According to Apple Chart, I'm number 7, Nigeria. Number 40 in Rwanda. Number 45 in Tanzania. Number 63 in Zambia. Thank you so much. Algeria at number 9. Libya at number 14. Jordan at number 17. Denmark at number 18, Cameroon at number 27, Romania at number 44, United Arab Emirates 109, Shukran Jazilan, United Arab Emirates, of course, in Canada 111, Hong Kong at 142, South Africa at 150, Mexico, muchas gracias, Mexico 159, Georgia at 176, Uganda at 221, Hong Kong at number 29, Bulgaria, the last but not the least, 23. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world like Mr. Joel Flanagan-Grannemann. Mr. Joel, what is the best highlight of Talia on the shore of the sea?
Oh, I don't know. There's a lot of really fun stuff that goes on, and there's some really brutal and some really powerful things that go on. I really crafted it with the idea of that there's going to be this time of safety that Talia and her people have, that it's very sweet, and Talia is in a love affair um, with one of her ladies, and they really kind of reconnect over this, and they kind of fall in love again, and it's everything's so bright and cheerful, and the baby's born, and everything is great, not great, but they're they're very happy, and then they're very focused on how they are going to present this child back to the fairy realm, and the support they need, and the support they're going to get from their mother, and all of these things. And then something happens, and it all just bursts into flames. And that was so deliberate on my part, that there's so much joy, there's so much happiness, and then it all just burns down. And then that leads into the rest of the book, as Talia kind of sinks into this quest for vengeance, the quest for the justice that she needs to have, that she feels she needs, that the pain and the anguish she feels over the destruction of this place of safety, and how it just continues to roll downhill as everything goes. And there's one chapter which there's two chapters I'm so very proud of, because it's a chapter that begins from Talia and a couple of her soldiers' point of view, and rolls through that day, and then she comes back to their refuge. And then the second chapter is what happens at that refuge while Talia and the soldiers are gone. And then it ends with them all coming back together and what goes forward. And it was crafting that and making sure that everything fit in together was it made me feel so good as a writer, that I could craft something so complex, and I could bring it, that I have these disparate stories all come together at one point, and then all the repercussions of all those decisions happen at once. So that's probably what I'm most proud of.
So, if we're talking about the highlights, what do you think the flaws?
That there is so much loss, that Talia and her ladies suffer, that her soldiers suffer, that her people, that the fairies suffer, and dealing with that loss is so very important, and how different people deal with it. Talia deals with it in one way. Lanor and Min, some of her ladies, how they deal with their loss, how the loss compounds into their past traumas, how it's very much PTSD for a lot of the soldiers, for Captain Shatterstaff, who is leading the soldiers who are Talia's bodyguards, the Nine, and how all of them deal with it in such different ways. How they deal with it based on their personality, how they deal with it based on their experiences. The soldiers deal with it differently, the ladies deal with it differently, and the healer, who is she is hit so very hard by all the loss that they suffered. She is hit so hard by it, and exploring those characters and exploring is it's very cathartic, because it allows you to dig deep into your emotions, dig deep into the emotions you have experienced yourself, emotions you have seen others experience. And that's what that's what going forward, the whole a lot of it, a lot of the themes of the book are going to be lost and dealing with trauma and figuring how to go forth, how to keep on going after all these devastating losses, and how you need the help of your sisters, your community, your religion in ways, and it all bundles together, and it's all I'm so excited to tell these stories because they are so important, not only to me but to all other people who can see these experiences and know that there is a way forward, that the path may be dark, but that path is still there.
Yes, definitely. So let's talk about the main character or characters of Talia on the shore of the sea.
Talia is the main character for the first two books, and she's the heir of the fairy realm. She's the daughter of Queen Zelendine, who is the queen of the fairies, and she's young. Fairies in fairy terms, fairies live quite a long while. They're not immortal. They do live somewhere around 300 years, based on their experiences and their lives and all that. But she's in just kind of out of her teen years and into her young adultness, and she's been trained her entire life to take on the role of the heir, and then to take on the role of the queen when her mother dies. And she's very strong. She's very determined. Her mother always says she can find a way either through a problem or around a problem, and that's how she goes forward. But she's also young, but she also makes mistakes. She trusts Bastille when maybe she shouldn't have. Put too much faith in him as a human who thought he was able to override his everything he had been taught, all his patriarchal attitudes, all his all the ingrained hatred of fairies that he had grown up with through his father and his grandfather and all that he was around, and thought that maybe he could rise above this. And unfortunately, he disappoints her and can't really rise above it. And but there's also the characters of the soldiers who accompany Talia on her exile and into on the shore of the sea. Captain Shatterstaff is the leader of the soldiers, and she is very much a oh, not quite no nonsense leader, but she is also a very compassionate and organized leader. She has a very dry sense of humor, as a lot of soldiers do. Very not fatalistic, but very well. We might die in this, but we'll have served each other, we'll have protected each other, and we'll have done everything we can to protect you. And if I have to die doing that, I will. And that's kind of the attitude that all the soldiers have, and all the ladies who are who accompany Talia. And it's I, I have there's a large cast of characters. And you asked me last episode about whether any regrets and things I would have done differently. That I probably would have, if I had to rewrite the book, I would probably have less characters because they do get a little confusing, and they do get a little, and it was very, sometimes it was very important to me that every of the ladies and every of the soldiers had a distinct personality, had something to do, had had goals and had flaws, and all those add to their add to the story in minor ways and in major ways. So that and so Talia is the main character, but the journey of Eleanor, who is Talia's first first lady, or second as she's called, her journey is very important. The journey of the other ladies, Min and Goldberry. Goldberry, who is a keeper of the goddess, essentially a priest in training, and kind of carries that weight of the moral authority and the always looking to her for guidance in what they should be doing in the eyes of the goddess, in the eyes of the mother of waves. And her journey is very important. She figures very importantly in books going, Goldberry does, in the books going forward, how she because all the ladies and all the soldiers react differently to what happens in book two, the tragedies that happen, and how they deal with it, and how they deal with what Talia becomes, because Talia is headed definitely down a very, very dark road, and some of them realize that, they can't do anything about it, and that they have to kind of let her be this thing, and that they just have to not step back, but to realize that maybe Talia's different from who she was at the beginning. And that's something that Flora, who is Talia's maid and second mother, has a hard time dealing with, and really has to come to grips with. This child is now an adult, and she's making choices that she may regret, but she has to let go of who Talia was and realize who she is now. So the arc of all these characters, and the arc of the story is so important, and so, I mean, it's so raw, and so very, very primal in a way, that it's, someone seeking vengeance, and somebody seeking to understand why that person would seek vengeance. And it's all wrapped up in a huge bow. It's a big story. It's epic. It's also personal, and a lot of conversations happen.
So, are you the writer, Mr. Joel, that you give balance villain and the hero?
There's a lot. There's You see a lot of glimpses of the villains through book one and book two, that you see them kind of reacting to the things that Talia does and what her soldiers do. You see a bit of Wingless's machinations, and how he's playing the two sides against each other, that he's working both with the humans and with the fairies and with the half fairies, and kind of building his own, not rebel group, not terrorist group, but sort of this group that he wants to hurt both sides, because he's so very angry and so very wrathful about what he is, and how he was raised, that make him this brutal brutal killer. And but I found myself, when I was writing book three, that I was having a lot of difficulty with writing from the villain's point of view. That I that there's less of that in book three, because felt I didn't want to get into their heads as much, because I would, at this point in my life, that with a lot of things happening in real life, that I wanted to see. I didn't want to get into that cesspool of evil and treachery, that I wanted to kind of see how my characters react to what's happening around them. That, we see little glimpses of the sisters, and we see little glimpses of Wingless, and we see what they're doing, but then we get what the major force of the story is, the fairies reacting to what's happening. So, but also in the Rose book, there's going to be a lot more of Wingless, because he's very important to the story, and I have to really really figure out a way to write him without kind of losing myself in his darkness.
Yes, so let's talk about the reviews of your readers. And according to Amy Bookshelf, a great read sequel. Oh, wow. How did you connect the first book to the second book to make it a great sequel?
Well, as I said, I wrote them together, so it was really a split at that moment of cliffhanger, where something's happening to a character, and we don't know what's going to happen to them. And then book two picks up kind of right after that cliffhanger. But there's a prologue where I kind of recap book one, but through the villain's point of view. We were just kind of talking about the villains, and through the sisters and through their machinations and how they see what all Talia has done through the first book, but through their prism. And I found that to be really interesting. And I didn't want to do just a previously on sort of thing where I summarize book one. I wanted to kind of play with it a little bit and give that information to remind readers, but also to present them new information on what's going on um, with Talia's enemies and what's going on when we can't see them, and to set up things that happen in book three and characters that come back in book three. And I think, but also connecting them is making sure that the characters stay consistent, that writing them all together, I didn't really have that problem, but again with writing the third book, making sure that they stay consistent with themselves and what I've done with them previously, and then any changes, that those are, that we can see them change and see and why they change and how they change. And it's not a struggle. It's something you have to be so aware of, that some of these characters have such a strong voice, and I have such a strong idea of who they are, that sometimes they just write themselves. That I just sit down and I start the conversation between, for example, Lanor and her mother, who they have a very strained relationship with between them, and there's a lot of history between them, and they talk about it and they fight about it and they keep fighting about it, and it's a matter of you know knowing those characters and knowing their voices and knowing where those characters want to be down the road. And it's so, again, it's so enjoyable, and it's such a joy. Again, I say that a lot of times. It's such a joy to be able to take these characters and craft them and put them into these situations and see how they react. And it's just fun. It's just fun. If you aren't having fun writing your characters, if you aren't having fun doing this, then you may want to think about why you're not having fun. If it's a job. It definitely is a job. It's my second full-time job, but it's also so enjoyable, and I look forward to being able to sit down with my laptop every day for half an hour, for an hour, and just play with my characters and see what they do next and
Yes,
talk to them. It's fun. It's so fun.
definitely. And according to Janine K, much darker than the first one. How darker it is, the second series.
It definitely gets very, very dark. There's, as I said, there's this buildup of light and joy, and then it all crashes down in one flaming night. And the seeing Talia react to that and change and become, starting down this evil road, and the things that she then does because she thinks she needs to, the the pain she causes, and then the pain she causes and the things she does, all in this quest for justice, that she calls it. And a lot of the other characters say it's just, you don't want justice, you want vengeance. And that's the push and pull between them. And it gets very dark, especially when um, the three sisters strike and they come out of the shadows, and instead of just being working behind the scenes, they move forward and put their plans into action. And there's a it's dark. That's I mean, again, not wanting to spoil it, but there's some kind of shocking things that happen, and Talia does some of them, and she reacts to a lot of the other shocking things that happen.
Yes, dark as a chocolate. Dark chocolate, people. So before we go on, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, Food 101, on our third season with Chef Alessandro, one of the executive chef in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. And thank you. Thank you so much for giving us our 1 million downloads. So thank you so much. So if you're giving Food 101 a 1 million downloads, I want you to support my Book 101 review because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world. Plus, one more, I have this upcoming podcast with one of the best comedian of all time, Mr. Mike Lucas, this coming June, called Comedy 101. So, Comedy 101 is created to empower laughter people so that your stress will go away and then to make a healthy living. Laugh, 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 people. Is laughter is the best medicine. So please do listen this coming June, Comedy 101.
Looking
So,
forward
Miss,
to it.
yes, Louis Cameron. So, Mr. Joel, can you please invite our listeners to buy all your books?
Please do. You can find all the information about me at my website, servantsofthemoonandsun.com. There you'll find links, Amazon links to all my books, and also the anthology I have a story in. It's called Tales Untold. It's by Ravens and Roses Publications, and I was really excited to be included in that group of 15 authors. Servants of the Moon and Sun is my website, and you can also find me on Twitter at Servants and I do a lot of the indie writing prompts. I post some silly raccoon pictures. I just do, and I talk to other authors and other people who are interested in writing, and it's just again, it's just fun. I just really enjoy interacting with people and you know making them laugh and making them think and posting little things about book three as it's coming out, and just learning how other people write and how they craft their day and craft their stories. And it's really enjoyable and really eye-opening sometimes to see how other people write, because you can get ideas and figure out, well, that works for them, maybe it'll work for me, or maybe it won't. And as a writer, one of the hardest things is to figure out what advice to take and what advice not to. And that's it's hard and it's difficult, and you figure out, but you figure it out as you go along. And I'm doing that. I'm figuring this out as I go along, as my wife and I will go through this journey, and it's really fun. So, servants and on Twitter, servantsofthemoonandsun.com. Find me there. Email me.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Joel because if you support him, he will give 100% or 1000 best. So, Mr. Joel, the Talia series is good for a movie or a series itself.
I think it's too big to be a movie. I think it would definitely be a series. I would think with all the because you have fairy characters who have wings, and they don't. I think it would be kind of maybe too expensive to do live action, so maybe it would be better as an animated series, kind of on the lines of not 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 the Disney, but more of the, and not anime. But I'm not sure. I'm not up on the latest trends in animation, but I think animation would be the better format for this story to be told in. And a series would be good, because you could run through the arcs of the book and the arc, because they have individual arcs. That you have Talia's relationship with Bastille in the beginning, then you have her exile, and then you have her run at leaving and trying to find a place of safety. These individual arcs could be series, and could be seasons in the series. So it, I definitely think a series would be great, and that would be wonderful. But you know, that's something that's really blue sky, and something that it'd be great if it would happen. But I'm not counting on it. I just want to write these books, and I want people to read them, and I want people to react to them and to find themselves in the characters, find the things they like, find the things they don't like, and just enjoy themselves and enjoy the journey and maybe learn something about themselves, learn something about other people. And, that's why I do it.
Yes, people, if you love what you're doing and you have the passion, you will succeed of what you're in for life. So, Mr. Joel, thank you for your time.
And thank you for this opportunity to talk to you and
Yes.
talk to all your listeners. And I'm really happy. I love doing podcasts. I've only done a couple, but I really love talking to people about my journey and my characters.
Morrigan people, see you soon.